Okay, hi everybody. I think we're about ready to start. My name is Vanessa Stobie, and I want to thank you all for being here on this very sunny Saturday. Hopefully, sitting by a window or something like, or outside even. Um, we are basically the Black Youth for York Region, and it is a new group. And in terms of that, it is a group that is started by youth and led by youth. So it is absolutely, I'm very proud to be here, to be honest. Our taglines are there. You can see them quite clearly. I'm going to be sharing the screen for a few slides, and then we will move right on to the panelists and our why we're here today. So just a few ground rules to begin. Just know that this is a safe space for us to learn, and not just to learn, but to disrupt anti-Black racism. And the youth have come together to really move us forward and show us the way, as I say all the time. As everyone has already done, and thank you for this, you've kept your microphone muted, so thank you. If you feel comfortable, please put your video on. If not, please turn it off. Throughout the whole experience, there'll be 3 poll questions I'll be asking. Very simple things. And at the end of this panel discussion, we will have a Q&A time. It'll probably be about 10-15 minutes, depending on how long the panelists speak, but definitely 10 minutes. So if you do have a question, I will be looking at the chat function for your question. Please privately chat me as opposed to putting it into the chat function for everyone. So my name is Vanessa Stobie. That's what will show up when you're looking for a private chat. We hope to get to the questions. We may not get to all, but I will put it in sequence order. Okay. Oops. Sorry. So just who we are, just for you to read. I just want to let you know this is a follow-up in terms of the Black Lives Matter marches and the solidarity walks that we've had in York Region in June, also planned by many of the youth on the panel right now. So that's something I did want to add to the introduction, and very proud that they're moving forth in a new way. Of course, we need to acknowledge the land that we're on. So we would like to acknowledge that we stand on the lands originally used and occupied by the first peoples of the Williams Treaties First Nations and other Indigenous peoples, and thank them for sharing this land. We would also like to acknowledge the Chippewas of Georgina Island First Nations as our close neighbors. We are guests on this space, and it is our shared obligation to respect, honor, and sustain this land. A shared understanding of how our collective past brought us to where we are today would help us walk together into a better future. So without further ado, I want to introduce our moderator. I am very privileged to introduce Josie Rose. I have a few of the things she is and does on the screen. I just want to go off script and just say that she's an inspiring adult, even to me. And I think she holds equity not only in the way she lives, but in all her actions. She's a facilitator. She has her master's and probably tons of other degrees I don't know about. But without further ado, I do want to introduce Josie Rose. And from here on, I will just be doing the technology functions. Enjoy the panel.
Let me take myself off mic. Sorry about that. So thank you, Vanessa, so much for that. So I just want to welcome everybody here today. I'm excited to see so many people registered. A few more people will be coming in soon. But although I can't go through all the names of those on this call, I do want to welcome all the dignitaries and honorable guests and the community here today to listen to these amazing Black youth and allies who are going to be discussing anti-Black racism in York Region. Along with Vanessa Stobie, who you just met, and Jacqueline Wong. We also had John Ashton and Kendra Tatum, who helped us plan this with the youth. We all had the honor and the pleasure for the last 2 months working alongside these 4 dynamic youth I'm going to be introducing you to. They were actually our bosses for the last 2 months, and it's really truly exciting and inspiring to work with them. So let me get started with the introductions. So first we have Sydney Baxter. So Sydney is a 17-year-old 17 grade 12 student from Markham District High School. She really recently organized a Black Lives Matter protest in the city of Markham and continues to advocate for Black youth in her community. She is currently working with the city of Markham and the York Region District School Board to create a space for Black youth to share their voices. And then next up, we have Rachel. She is a 15-year-old high school student that is eager to make a positive change. She enjoys performing spoken word poetry, writing, and public speaking. She continues to she hopes to continue advocating and bring a light, important issues to her community, especially in her Asian community. Next up, we have Cameron Davis. So he is the creator behind the CammyD YouTube page. At 15, he has already made a name for himself as an athlete, yeah, an athlete, a content creator, gamer, activist, published author, and clothing designer. And the Canadian teen is working on making long-lasting positive change in Canada by empowering youth to use their voices for action. And then, last but not least, we have Hannah Mullings-Tatum. She is an 18-year-old high school graduate, inspiring actor, writer, and director. She graduated from Huron Heights Secondary Regional Arts Program, and she has led her high school's GSA and will be attending Humber's Theater Arts Program next fall. So I just want to have a welcome to all our speakers today. I'm really excited to start hearing from them, but I just also wanted to recognize one other person that unfortunately wasn't able to be a part of this call today, who was Nicole Carliard, who assisted with the planning of today. Nicole is a high school student in Newmarket, and she also led the Solidarity Walk in Newmarket. So as an ally, I was really proud to be working with her as well. So let's get started. So the first question that we had was for Sydney and Cameron. You both helped organize a Solidarity Walk within York Region. So why did you see the need to do so, and what did you want to accomplish?
So I'll answer that question first. So I thought that the Solidarity Walk was very successful in Markham, and it just showed people really a different perspective that some people weren't very used to hearing. They heard stories, well, not stories, they heard real life encounters of anti-Black racism in Markham that people like Cameron and Heather Davis had to face. So that was very important to me. And yeah.
Okay, Cameron?
For me, it was just getting my voice heard. I've had lots of experiences with racist people and with racism in the past, and I felt like Sydney's opportunity of letting my mom and I speak at the protest was what would allow me to share my voice, share my experiences, and make sure that my voice was heard. And it worked out. Newscasters, teachers, directors have reached out to Sydney and I and others to help make positive change, and I just want to tell you that positive change is happening.
Awesome, that's cool. So why do you, what is the need for this new group and the panel discussion today? And Hannah and Sydney and Cameron, anybody can answer that.
We just wanted to highlight, the protest was so successful, so we just wanted to highlight the same things that we mentioned in the protest, but go into more depth and have a new audience. Since it's a COVID time period, we thought that doing it online might be the best way to reach the most people and highlight how to solve anti-Black racism, what allyship is, and how we can continue making change.
Right. Rachel, do you want to jump in on that, or do you have anything to add?
I think, yeah, I agree with exactly everything that Cameron just said. Just to bring to light some issues and this issue, and talk more about like allyship and convenience since it's online too. So
Yes, this has been a great
For people
platform.
that can't go, so.
All right, so what can you share with all of us on how anti-Black racism has impacted your life? Cameron, do you want to start with that?
Since the first memory that I have of experiencing anti-Black racism vividly was getting called white at school. I'd be called white for because of the way the music I listened to, the music I liked, it's just my characteristics, and it's annoying because I don't want to be defined as something that isn't me, and I want people to know that being black is my culture, being black is who I am, what I appear as, like, and undermining my accolades by saying that I'm acting white is a racist act, and you guys have to understand that. People in general have to understand that.
And I don't want to put you on the spot, but you did say some amazing things at the Solidarity Walk. Can you add some of that stuff to this conversation?
Okay. I also know that the main thing that I talked about at the Solidarity Walk was about a teacher who wasn't educated and didn't believe that racism existed in Canada, and I had to educate teachers. I had to educate them on what racism was, and I had to get my parents involved in order to get a better mark. My teacher involved, my principal involved. So it was a whole hassle to educate my educator, and people need people need to understand it, right? And people, when they understand it, they'll be able to make change.
Sydney, do you want to add to that?
Yeah. So the first time I really experienced anti-Black racism, the very first memory that I could probably think of was junior kindergarten when I was 4 years old. And me and my best friend, who was white, we were sitting on the carpet and we were chatting, and the teacher didn't want us to chat. So she decided that she would send me to sit on a chair for a timeout, but my white best friend can sit on the carpet with the rest of the class like everything's normal. So that was the very first thing. And then from there, in school, I realized in certain grades, certain teachers would pick on me, even though I wouldn't necessarily be doing anything wrong. Like, for example, in grade 4 now, I had a teacher where I was sitting in class and the students around me were talking and I got in trouble, even though I wasn't talking. And things like that, just constantly trying to get me into trouble, even though I didn't do anything. So that's within the school system, and I would say with the teachers. And more on the student side, I would say that it's people like Cameron said, saying that you act white, people being surprised or undermining me or thinking that I'm not smart enough, or thinking that, or being surprised that I do get 90s, that I do try my best in school, and being surprised by things like that. So I feel like it's just a mix of things and a mix of systems that really have contributed to my personal experience of anti-Black racism.
So, Cameron, you did mention the school board, but is there any other issues that you found within your own community, such as, I think you mentioned going to the mall, things like that?
Yeah, it's very racism, and it's very like systemic, right? Like systemic racism. But what I mean by that is saying like it affects our daily decisions. It affects our everyday decisions, every second decisions. For example, I know that if I want to go outside, I have to be aware of what I pack in my bag. I have to make sure that my Afro pick isn't in my pocket or is visible and is mistaken for a weapon. And I think that, especially when in stores, I have to make sure that I have to show myself as innocent and show myself that I am not a thief, and I have to show myself that my hands are empty, that there's nothing in the bag that belongs to the store, and I have to put my best self forward. I have to greet the store clerk. I have to do all this extra stuff that a white person could do, but doesn't necessarily have to do, or fear of without doing can get in trouble.
That sounds very exhausting, but yes, I've gone through that too. And I think a lot of people on this call that are from the BIPOC community, we have all gone through that kind of situation. And it is very scary sometimes. And, walking out of the store when you don't want to buy anything and you just leave and you're just like, oh my God, I better put up my hand so they see that it's empty. So I understand that. So their second question that we were going to ask is going to starting with Rachel. So, what does allyship mean to you, and how do you see your part in dismantling anti-Black racism in your home, your schools, and your neighborhood?
Well, for me, I think that my part is just obviously to be an ally. And to me, an ally is a person who is always learning, educating themselves, and confronting their own personal prejudice and like bias and stuff, which we all have. And just finds constantly is looking for ways to help and support the Black community. And I think that's what an ally is. And I think that's what I can contribute to this, um, especially talking, like having those difficult conversations with my family members. So, like with my Asian family members, I think that's what I can do to help this situation.
Okay. And Sydney, Cameron, and Hannah, what does allyship mean to you as a as somebody from the Black community?
Well, to me, I think that allyship is, like Rachel said, somebody who continues to educate themselves and supports, and who show up, and get loud about our issues just the same way we do. And it's very important because we don't get to stop advocating for ourselves and advocating for our own equal rights. To have allies that advocate with us is very important.
Okay. Sydney or Cameron?
To add on to that, there's also, I find that some people, when they're doing allyship, they think that it's more them saving the Black community as a non-Black person than walking alongside us and really trying to learn about our struggles. So that's something that I think is really important to see the difference between that. If you are an ally, you're working with us, you're trying to learn more, then that's not always going to a Black person saying, you teach me. It's educating yourself, and also knowing that because you aren't Black does not mean that you can like be like the savior sort of thing. Like, I'm not Black, but I can save your entire race. I can lift you all up by my voice alone. Like, that's not how it works. We have to all work together in order to get stuff done.
Cameron?
Exactly what they said. An ally is someone who is willing to get involved in the fight and is willing to educate themselves, is willing to listen to our experiences, learn from them, and then act upon them to make change.
Thank you. So, yeah, being silent is still being complicit to anti-Black racism. So that's something that we really have to be aware of. Okay, so our next question is going to go to Rachel. So we have seen an increase in racialized hate crimes in schools and public spheres here in Markham, but also other parts of the region. It is recognized that anti-Black racism is seen within the Asian community. As an ally, what steps do you think Asian youth need to take to address the issues of anti-Black racism? And what do you think you have to do to change? How do we truly begin this cross-cultural conversation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Obviously, I think when we think of racism, we think it's like only white people that are being racist, and that is totally not true. There are many groups and people within the people of color community who are being racist, and I hear like kind of racist things within my Asian family sometimes, unfortunately. And I think that we just need to stand up against anti-Black racism. And that could be as simple as reading books about it, watching videos about it, reposting like resources and stuff on social media platforms, attending protests. It's very easy to just start the first step, I guess. And how to start the conversation, this is very difficult. And I think you just need to remember that it's not going to be one conversation. It's not just going to be one, like it's not just going to be like you sit everybody down and then they suddenly change their worldview, because that is not possible. So it can start through like a text or something like, hey, I'm going to go to this protest or something, like anything, just a small start. And I read this online that a great tip about starting these kind of conversations is just relating their past experiences of oppression back to anti-Black racism that's happening right now. And because of COVID-19 right now, I guess Asians are feeling a lot of discrimination. And I feel that too. Like now when I'm walking down the streets, I just feel just scared that somebody's gonna come up to me and like stab me or like just say bad things to me, because I'm like wearing a mask or something. There was a situation that happened in Main Street Unionville a few days ago, a week ago, I don't know. But it's like it was very close to home and just makes me really worried. But this is actually, I guess, it has good in it because this can be used to relate back to anti-Black racism, and you can tell your parents like, hey, you feel this is how they feel, but times 10 all the time, so you can just relate that back. So yeah, I think that would really help as well.
Right. We can't take off our skin, unfortunately, right? So the minute we wake up and the minute we go to bed, we are dealing with anti-Black racism. And I know a lot of parents that feel they are crying every single day, that they're worried when their kid walks out that door. I know I am, right? So thank you for that. So many people think because they don't use the N-word or overtly spout racialized hate that they aren't committing anti-Black racism acts. We hear the statements or microaggressions from people saying things like, I don't see color, or I have a Black friend, or I don't laugh at racist jokes, or I'm not racist. If we truly want to dismantle anti-Black racism in York Region, what do we need people and other youth to do? And that can go to Hannah, or Sydney, or Cameron.
Can I start off by saying I just want to say that I take particular issue with the phrase "I don't see color" because I think it's a very privileged way of thinking. Because if you're going to be colorblind in the world and think that that makes you woke for, oh, I only judge people off their character and I don't see color, we want you to judge people based off of their character, yes, but you need to be able to see what's happening to different communities based off of the color of their skin. And if you're not seeing color, you're missing that entirely.
Yeah, color is part of us, right? Right. So yeah, Cameron and Cindy. Sydney.
I can add on to what Hannah was saying. The whole I don't see color. Everyone is equal. Like, well, everyone is equal, but like, the I don't see color, I'm colorblind sort of thing. Because just because you don't see color doesn't mean that the education system doesn't see color. Doesn't mean that the police department doesn't see color. Doesn't mean that people walking down the street, other people, don't see color. So by you not seeing color, you're basically saying that, oh yeah, police brutality against Blacks doesn't really exist because I don't see color. They're just people who are just randomly getting picked on by police. So it kind of just diminishes the problem and kind of tries to sugarcoat it kind of, and try to also, like, I don't know, like, I just find that if you have the privilege to say I don't see color, then it just doesn't make sense to me, because I have to see color and I have to be conscious of my color every time I wake up, when I go into stores, when I do schoolwork, when I'm with people. I have to be conscious of my color. So by someone to say, oh, well, I don't have to see my own color, it doesn't matter to me what color I am, because you don't have to worry about that. So it's more like having empathy for people who do have to be conscious of what they look like, conscious of the color of their skin. People who know that they can't go into certain cities or certain areas because they'll be attacked. Like that sort of thing. You have to be conscious of that, is what I'm trying to get at.
Right. Cameron?
Yeah, ditto to what they both said. Those are some great points. I'm going to go into focusing on like the N-word, or I don't laugh at racist jokes, or I don't laugh when I hear racist jokes, because one thing is that the N-word is baseline. It's a derogatory slur. No matter who says it, no matter what the intention is, it will always be a derogatory slur. So even if someone gives you the N-pass, or even if someone says it's okay to say it, one, the N-pass doesn't exist, okay? Because no one can give you the privilege of saying something that was used to offend Black people in the past. That doesn't change the meaning of it. And two, if, like, what's the point of saying something that's going to offend another culture that's been used to offend a culture in the past? You can use other terms. You can use other ways to uplift the black community. And I know that people say that they haven't laughed at racist jokes when they hear it, but most of the TV shows that we watch now, or the TV shows that we watched in the past, they highlight or they feed off of, they use it to entertain us by saying racist things or saying different ism things, because that's the entertainment business. That's like the humor mechanism. So don't get me wrong. Don't, like, now if you see a show or a movie, don't think you have to have the tough face, the straight face, like try not to laugh, but just understand that if you understand it, and if you think that that's the normalization, if you think that's normal to say to other people, you're wrong. And try to educate others if they say it, or if they think that it's okay.
All right, thank you. Thank you for that. Hannah, you said something, right? Do you want to add to that?
I did. I was
Okay.
just going to add that
Yeah, I saw your face.
Sorry. I was just going to add that I think that a lot of the problem with a lot of people who say that, oh, I'm not racist because I don't say the N-word, I don't see color, or I have a black friend, don't register how that all of that is just the tip of the iceberg. It's not, racism goes so much deeper than that, and it's rooted so much deeper in our systems, which is why we use terms like systemic racism. Because just not saying the N-word is not enough to combat racism.
Right.
Can I just add to that?
Yes, I was gonna. Yeah.
Yeah. No. I heard it it's in my song, or the very popular "my boyfriend's black, he lets me say it." Like, that's not, you are not entitled to say that word because you don't know about the painful roots and the history. Like what Hannah said, you didn't go through that. You can't say that. It's very painful, and you don't know how that feels. So, yeah.
So, Rachel, since you're talking, I was also going to say, so how do you think you can address these transgressions, especially when you hear your teachers or other students or your family's members saying anti-racism statements, consciously or unconsciously?
Yeah, well, I think that we just need to keep on remembering that microaggressions and things like that, that is still racism, that is still very racist, that is still hurtful. And I don't think that we're allowed to say, oh yeah, I'm just gonna let it go, because it's still hurtful. And it's our job and responsibility to educate whoever said that, and be an ally, speak out against it, and don't be afraid, because you have to do this. You have a responsibility to speak out. You can't, as a person that is not black, you can't just be like, I'm just gonna let that slide because you're not black. So I think it's just our responsibility to speak out against it, tell them that it's wrong, educate them, and
yeah, it takes a lot of courage, but that's what we need our allies to really come forth and be that voice for us as well in those times. So when we talk about systemic racism, Hannah, Cameron, and Sydney, how do you feel about not seeing yourself or not even hearing your stories, your histories in academics, in the curriculum, in the school curriculum? And if you do hear them, I remember when I was going to school, it was black people were all slaves and we were cannibals. And yeah, so I hated myself when I was growing up in school, because I was taught that I was nothing better than, nothing, right? So now those things are still there, still in the books, but also the history, the great history about us is taken out. Okay, Hannah, it seems like you have.
I was going to say, I think hearing about Black history in my school, it was, like you said, it was just like, oh, we were in Africa living in huts, and then we came to America and we were slaves, and then we were liberated. And it makes us sound like victims, which to an extent I think we are, but I think a better way to look at it would be to look at it as we're survivors, and we're going to keep going on through this. And it really hurts to not hear our success stories and things like our musicians and our politicians that were successful and things like that, because it makes me feel like there's only a certain little box of what Black people are in history when we're so much more than that.
Our history didn't start with slavery. We had a whole bunch of stuff before, right? So, Sydney or Cameron?
To add on to what Anna was saying about how, you know, all we really learn is we were in huts, then slaves, and liberated. That sort of thing is what is, to my extent, like the basic Black history that we learn. And it's not even, it's not a full history. They're picking snippets of the history and teaching us the parts where we were oppressed, but are leaving out the parts where we were ruling empires and we were teaching the Europeans how to be civil. So that part is missed out. And on top of that, also in the curriculum, we don't learn about present day Black authors, you know, Black scientists, because there are many Black scientists out there who have made some crazy contributions to the science field that we don't know about. Like everything. There is so much that Black people have done. And I've heard an excuse once that was, well, we can't learn about the people in Africa. They're not from Canada. Why should we learn about them? And to that, I have to say, why do we learn about Shakespeare, who is racist, sexist, and has highly sexualized content in his plays? And he's not even from Canada. He's from Europe. So why are we learning about people like that when we can be learning about people, Black people, and people of other ethnicities who have made positive contributions, who do the best that they can do in their field? Why aren't we learning about them? Because I know there's Black Canadians that we can learn about, so there's no excuse with that. And I know there are tons and tons of Black authors in Africa specifically, because I learned about a Black author in my English class. So that's also something that we should be learning about.
Cameron?
Yeah, referring to the school system, the lack of representation of minorities and of Black people and of First Nations is has to be highlighted on and has to be shown. Like, especially on the point that Cindy's saying is that the excuse is that they're American, or the excuse is that they're not Canadian. I've been doing a lot of like research and stuff, and there's lots of rich Afro-Canadian history like in Ontario, and the education system has to highlight the fact that they've missed out on it, and they have to educate their youth and educate themselves on what it is. I'll give you an example. I know that in Chatham and in Dresden and Buxton, there's these museums that talk about slavery and talk about how just because the slaves escaped from America doesn't mean that they slavery was done, and that there are these holidays that aren't even mentioned in school. I didn't even know about till recently, like Simcoe Day, or August 1st, which is the civic holiday. That is actually like Emancipation Day, and that was the day that slavery was abolished in Canada, and I didn't even know that. So there has to be a way to educate our youth and educate teachers on one, history, and then also use Black people as a way to represent others in successful areas.
Okay, so with that being said, what about Black history? We have that Black History Month where we celebrate Black people, Black accomplishments. I think I've been out of school for a long time, so I don't actually know what it looks like. But I hear from a lot of people that some students don't like the Black History events in the schools, and I want to know how you guys felt. I know how my son felt. He says he dreaded February 1st. And it just brought down his mental health. Like it destroyed him when he had to go to school for that 28 days of being targeted. So how do you guys feel when it comes to Black History events in your schools?
So, okay. So, personally in my schools, well, I guess my elementary school and my high school, what I've seen is that the schools like to do the very bare minimum possible. They like to bring up the Rosa Parks theme. They like to bring up Martin Luther King, and they bring up, sometimes if they want to be fancy, Nelson Mandela. So that's what I've heard. And they also are like, okay, so since it's Black History Month, we're going to play Black music on the announcements. But they also don't realize that half of the music genres Black people invented. So you're technically always playing black music on the announcements every day of the years. But anyways, that's another topic to go into. But what I've seen is that schools, they need to switch it up. Like, there can't be a little, Rosa Parks little mention here, or a Martin Luther King little tidbit here. Like, it's just not enough. And also for the, like, I don't know, I've also seen teachers, the schools, they would round up all the black kids and the black teachers, and they're like, okay, you need to do something for the rest of us. You need to organize something for us. We are not your servants. We are not here to educate an entire school population on our history. You are the teachers. You are supposed to be teaching the students, not the students teaching you. And especially not like 5 students within a school of thousands of students teaching hundreds of teachers. That just doesn't make sense. So that also goes back to, I guess, the education thing. Teachers need to know about Black history, and not just Black history, but history of other ethnicities too, because schools are not just white. Schools are not just purely Asian or purely brown or purely Black. There's a mix in all schools. So the teachers definitely need to be more educated on that, so that they're not, like asking the Black student in the class, like the one Black kid in the back of the class saying, hey, you, come up here and tell us how slavery affects you. Like, that's not how it works. You can't do that to kids. And I feel like that's also why a lot of kids don't like Black History Month at their schools, because it's like, now it's like all eyes are on you. People now, they're like, you are the Black kid in the school, and it's Black History Month. So now I'm going to be paying extra attention to you specifically. And you just kind of feel not targeted, but you feel like the eyes on you. You can feel it walking down the hall when they say, it's Black History Month, guys, we're going to play rap music. Like, you just feel it on you. So I feel like schools need to definitely do a better job with that. And I know I've been talking for a while. I'll give it to someone else in like just a few seconds. But one of my suggestions would be to have, a cultural day, so that people can show the Black culture itself, to show all the trends that we started, to show all the accomplishments that we had, not just, rap music and Nelson Mandela. Like, that's not all that there is to Black culture. So that would be really good. And also to just show the different parts of Black culture, because Black people come from a variety of places. You can be from Sweden and be Black. Like, if you have a family history of Black people in Sweden, for example. Or you can be from Ghana, you can be from Cuba. Like, there's different types of Black people. We're not all just one type of Black people. So that's my little rant on that, because Black History Month at school really kind of gets me mad sometimes.
Yeah. Okay, so Cameron or Hannah? Hannah, Cameron?
Okay, yeah. I just didn't want it to start at the same time and then collide.
You go first, Cameron.
Okay. My main point is just expanding Black History Month. It doesn't have to be. Why is it like a month that we're celebrating Black history? I think, like we talked about before, incorporating it into the curriculum and teaching it throughout the whole year of the whole school year in different subjects is the best way to is the best way to educate the youth, and that way you're reinforcing it every class or every other class. So that way they're gonna learn it more effectively. And I know there's gonna be an argument now saying we can't start in high school because most people are finishing high school. There's gonna be this is too much stress or something like that. But starting it in grade 1 or in the elementary stages, and then building it all the way up through the whole education system would be a great way to educate youth. And then it could be also educating the teachers, because you're learning at the same pace as them. And if there's going to be a sense of, I can ask any questions I want because, not in a bad way, but I can ask any questions I want without the fear of being, how do you not know this? Or this is what you're supposed to know already. Like, how am I supposed to know this if you haven't taught it to me? So, yeah, just finding ways to incorporate it into the system and bringing it up with the children as they're learning about it.
Okay. Hannah?
I think that they summed up everything
that's
that I
what
was going to say.
All right. So, okay, so that is really good. So when we go back to even talking about schools or the systemic issues that we face every single day, how does that actually impact you or your mental health? Right? You spoke about that kind of, Cameron, that not seeing yourself in the curriculum, even seeing the negative pictures that we see in the newspaper about us, and you know, in other places. How does that impact your mental health?
Okay.
Sorry.
No, you go first.
Okay, I think that I totally agree with everything they just said, and I think that it's not enough to just have a month dedicated to this. The whole culture, like a month is not enough to learn about a whole culture, obviously. And I also think that, again, I'm not saying that I know exactly how you guys feel, because I'm sure it's so much worse. But for me, I feel, I guess, kind of ashamed and awkward, because again, like Chinese people are not like represented either. So I think that they would probably feel like seeing only one chapter or something in the whole textbook about how we built railroads, some of us died. Like it's not. So I feel like I can I kind of know how you guys feel in that sense, that it's just embarrassing. Like this is not like, I feel like, why did our people contribute so little? And I'm sure we contributed more, but why is it not represented? So I'm sure I can kind of feel that they probably feel just angry at the school system, like sad and depressed, like why are we not represented? So yeah.
And Cameron and Hannah or Sydney, about the mental health?
Expanding like off of the school topic and just more generally.
Just generally.
Okay. Because generally I feel like there's a censor on black youth, because with me personally, because I can't speak for all, but for me personally, I feel like that in certain situations I can't act with my full emotion, with my full anger when I'm mad, or I have to contain my emotions and contain myself, so that it's not seen as ghetto, it's not seen as irrational for a black kid, and I don't fit into the stereotype. Because once you fit into the stereotype of black youth, it's hard for your reputation can be altered forever. And I feel like if not being able to see yourself in those spots where there's success, and those spots where we have a position of power, is influencing youth to think that, oh, okay, I can only be the minimum.
Right. Sydney?
So for my mental health experience being a black youth in the school system, I would say elementary school, not great. It was not great. There was maybe 4 black kids in my grade. They were out of 90 students, 80 students. And yeah, just the whole atmosphere of the school was not welcoming to black people. It was very, you have to be a certain way or else you're less than. And I saw it in well, this isn't necessarily the education curriculum, this is more the students and the teachers ish. But it's more like, you know, I had to like tone down my personality sometimes so I wouldn't get in trouble. I wouldn't make connections with my teachers, and I only had really good connections with like maybe 2 of my teachers, and the rest I would barely talk to my teachers, barely ask them for help, barely go to them, because I didn't feel comfortable with them. But yet they would, you know, give attention to other students, you know, help other students, give other students free passes for doing things like I know, okay, story time again, mini story, I'll keep it short and sweet. But I knew a black male student. I was in his class 4 times, but grade 3, the teacher, I loved my teacher. I'm gonna say her name, Miss Cooper. I loved her. She's an amazing teacher, and she was the best. I saw how she was with him. She had a connection with all her students. She was very caring. Whoop, sorry. And then I saw in grade 6 the same black male who had a great experience, very bubbly, lively, funny kid, was shut down by my teacher in that grade. And I saw him kind of, you know, become less talkative, you know, less happy, less funny, just just his personality just dulled down because of that. And he would get into tons of trouble, sent to the office, always yelled at, while another girl in my grade, not black, full out cheated, copied and pasted an assignment, and my teacher laughed with her about it, and she got away with it. So that's a sort of unfairness that I saw in my school in elementary. In high school, I've also seen some very questionable things, like the black guys specifically getting targeted by the administrators. I've seen the administrators just kind of follow them around. I've seen them stare them down. I've seen them do some very questionable things, and it's just, yeah, like I've had to dull down sometimes my personality, my emotions, like Cameron said, in order to not seem angry or to not, seem crazy, I guess, to these teachers. So that would be my experience, and I guess some other things that I've seen in the school system.
So when you are actually experiencing anti-Black racism within your schools, within the community, any other place, and you actually call it out and say that I'm experiencing this anti-Black racism, how do you feel when you do talk about it? Do you feel validated, or are you believed? Cameron or Sydney or Hannah? Have you ever actually called out anti-Black racism?
Personally, with anti-Black race, well, elementary school, I don't think so, because I either didn't realize it at the time or I was too scared to say anything because there's no one to really go to. In high school, I've seen things that I knew were not right, and I would talk about it with my peers, and I'd say that right there is messed up. That seems really off. That's not right. But I don't think I really talked to anyone about it at my school. I know there's two teachers in specific that I know I can go to anytime and about this stuff, but I don't know. I don't really go to it, but come September, the administrators better, watch what they're doing, because I will be calling them out. But previously, no, I didn't really, because I felt like something bad would have happened if I did.
Okay. So Hannah, the next question I want is going to you. So this question is about intersectionality. So Hannah, how is your experience of anti-Black racism as a racially ambiguous Black youth born and raised in York Region, specifically Georgina?
So I think the first things first is to understand what intersectionality means. According to Oxford, intersectionality is the interconnected nature of social categorization, such as race, class, and gender, as they apply to an individual or group, and are regarded as creating overlapping and interdependent systems of discrimination or disadvantage. I personally like to think of intersectionality as a city intersection. Each side of the intersection is a different social categorization that not only defines who I am, but how I am viewed by others and how I'm treated in certain systems. The difference between this metaphorical intersection and a real life intersection is that all the lights are green and traffic flows in every single direction simultaneously, and I stand in the middle trying desperately to getting run over. I'm visually racially ambiguous. This means that I'm often met with the questions, so what are you? And people can never seem to put their finger on where I came from and what my ethnicity is. And people are often shocked to find that I am, in fact, half Black and a Canadian citizen. Because of my visual ambiguity, I experience three things. The first one is systemic privilege. The second is microaggressions from both my communities and a lacking sense of identity. I don't present as Black. Most people don't assume that I'm Black by looking at me. This gives me systemic privileges, such as the ability to shop without the store owner following me. Strangers don't stare at me on the street or shout slurs from their cars. I'm not at a disadvantage when I apply for jobs because of my appearance. My hair isn't labeled as unprofessional. And more significantly, I don't fear for my life at the sound of police sirens. However, it's because of these privileges that I'm not often received well in BIPOC spaces. I've heard the phrase, "you're not that Black," on far too many occasions, and I'm often excluded from conversations about anti-Black racism because I wouldn't understand. The problem with that is that I do understand, and I have experienced anti-Black racism. And I may not look Black, but my brothers do. My mother does. My aunties and uncles and cousins and my grandparents all do. I understand what hearing police sirens does to the male members of my family. And I see the worry in my mother's eyes as my brother approaches the age that Tamir Rice was when he was murdered. Do not think that I am unaffected. Do not think that there aren't people who wait until I tell them that I'm Black to expose their own racism and prejudices. They say things like, "Oh, so you're and I'll let everybody else figure out what that blank is. Do not think that I'm not used as a token Black friend by groups of white kids who won't speak to anybody who have a darker complexion than me, or even advocate for equal rights. Do not think that I'm not called exotic or told that I'm pretty for a Black girl by ignorant guys who think that it's a compliment. It's not. Do not think that I haven't been told that I don't act Black or I talk white, which, what does that even mean? I don't fit into their box of what a Black girl should be, so I'm not Black enough. So what does it mean to be Black? For me, being Black is sitting in my grandparents' apartment with Bob Marley and Gujama Bonton playing over the stereo, the smell of oxtail, rice, and plantains wafting through the kitchen. It's sitting for hours as my mother braids tight cornrows into my hair that last for weeks. It's going to family gatherings and watching the older people in the room dance and laugh and sing and speak rapidly to each other in patois. It's listening to my auntie say, "Yes, Black girl magic," whenever she does anything right. It's listening to my mother speak passionately about equality. It's having understood racism since I was 6 years old when my white friends had to wait until 4th grade social studies before they even knew that Black people were treated differently. It's being proud when Obama was elected in the States, even though I am Canadian. It's being bombarded with headline after headline, another Black man killed due to police brutality, and simultaneously wanting to be on the front line of protests and wanting it to stop because it's all too much. But you keep your head up and you march on because you know you have to. Because our people, our culture, we're too powerful to be silenced. And that's being Black to me. As an aspiring writer and book lover, I know the importance of established diversity. It allows us to see ourselves in the characters we hold so dearly. However, I never found myself in my favorite stories. Even if a character did look like me, they were never half Black. They were always a white girl, for me, at least with the way I look. I could never fully connect with the faces in my history textbooks because they only ever represented a part of me, or sometimes only a fragment of who I am. Going forward in New York region, I would like to see myself in education and in my history classes. I would like to see my face and the faces of my fellow Black, Indigenous, POC in those textbooks, and not just in February and June. We have a rich history, and it would be a shame for it to go unheard and forgotten. And while slavery and the civil rights movement are important topics to discuss and should continue to be discussed, it is equally important to discuss our high points, our kings and queens, our athletes, our musicians, our politicians, our artists. They are all important pieces of our history. To know that I am not alone, to know I'm not the only one, would make a world of difference. Therefore, I would like to know that as a racially ambiguous Black young woman, my voice matters and my history is important.
Thank you so much for that, Hannah. No. That was amazing. And it's yes, it's really nice to hear such passion, and especially where you come from in Georgina. There's not a huge Black population there, so when you say you're alone, I'm sure you say that you're alone, right? So thank you for sharing that. That was really great. I know we're ending time, so I wanted to make sure that we get the other questions in. So Rachel, this is for you. So what do you need from the Black community in order to become a true ally? And and what would you tell others who want to become allies but don't know where to start, or just that they don't feel comfortable in doing allyship work?
Okay. So first of all, I don't think that we need anything from the Black community to become allies, because we have the responsibility to be like allies and educate ourselves and stand up for what's right. And we shouldn't need anything from the Black community to help us, because it's not their job to teach us about something that we should know. We have the responsibility to learn this by ourselves, and we have the responsibility to be allies. And I would say to people who don't know where to start that you can start anywhere. Like, just start small. I mean, you can, as I said earlier, you can just join in on a protest. You don't have to start anything big yet, but like just doing the little steps. If you're not comfortable, just start by like reposting something, just educating yourself. Like, first, like, you should prioritize educating yourself. Never say like words that you don't really know what they mean and things like that. And just communicate your thoughts and be an ally in your own way. Like, if you like graphic design, you can make posts for social media. If you are a good speaker, you can speak out like what's happening now. You can go to protests and start small, I guess. But I just, yeah, so for allies, you should start small. And also for allies, you should not feel like, hey, I can't do this because Black people haven't taught me how to do this. Like, no, it's your job to educate yourself. It's your job to know what to do, and it's your job to teach yourself about their history and like what you need to do to become a better ally. So yeah.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add to that? No? Okay, so next question, our last question. So what are our next steps? Okay, Cameron, I think you have the first.
I think that a step that we have to make clear for all is that we have to get youth involved in where positions of power are needed, and specifically minority youth, because I feel like that if we get youth into those positions, that means our voices will be heard at a bigger scale and a larger scale, so that change will be more likely to happen. I mean, getting youth into a youth council. I know that youth councils are going to be starting again this August, so getting involved in youth council in your region, or getting involved, or creating your own youth council, is going to be a way to spark change and in your community, and have an area to discuss your problems, discuss solutions, and make change, make positive change.
Okay, and sorry, who goes next? I think it was Hannah.
This is the one about what we want to say to the police and the school boards.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start with the school board. What the bottom line for both of these organizations is that we want them to know they need to know that we need to see changes happening. We need to know that our voices are heard, because at this point, this issue isn't about awareness anymore, it's about action. So for the school boards, they need to know that 1 month of educating students on Black history a year is not enough, and our history is worthy of more than that. And that their silence on the mistreatment of their Black students by our peers and by our teachers is complicity to systemic racism, and we deserve to feel safe and valued at school the same way the other students do. And for the police, I said that it is important that the officers that are sent into schools build positive relationships with Black youth. That I think will help bridge the gap on a larger scale, so that there's less misunderstanding between specifically young Black men and the police. I also think it should be recognized that 24 weeks of training is not enough. Lawyers, for example, go to school for a minimum of 6 years to practice law, and they don't even carry a weapon. Whereas police only have to do a 3 or 4 year program, and it doesn't necessarily have to be in law. It can be in a social science, which I think is in social science like psychology or something like that, which I think would be an equally good, important thing for a police officer to take as well as law. But my point is that the amount of training and requirements that you have to be a police officer isn't enough currently, and they need to be, if they truly want to protect and serve, their education needs to be more thorough. Yes, that's, yeah.
Okay. Does anybody have anything to add to that about police or schools, or what the region can do?
Yes, I have something to add to that. So,
Okay.
I'll make the school and police thing short because with the regarding the municipalities, I can talk more about that. But I totally agree with what Hannah said about the school system, that the school board, specifically York Region, they need to work with the Black youth at this point in time. They have heard, at this point, I'm assuming, like tons and tons and tons of lectures from professionals, from people who spent their entire life in this subject. But now it's time for them to hear from the actual students in their board who are experiencing the things that they either don't change or the things that they don't care about. So they definitely need to create some sort of communication, direct communication between Black youth and the ministry, not the Ministry of Education, Board of Education, so that they can hear exactly what we have to say and tell them what's working in our schools and what's not working. And with the police as well, I've come to the conclusion that the police in schools, they need to be like, they need to know the students they're working with. You can't take an officer off the streets and send it into the school and be like, you know what, do your job. If a kid's doing something bad, do whatever you want. Like, that can't happen. And I feel like if the officers that come into the schools, if they know the kids, if they, you know, have a relationship with the students, then things will get better with them. And lastly, for the municipalities, so I'm from Markham, and I know the city of Markham has done a lot of work into putting stuff into anti-Black racism, and they have been trying a lot. Like, personally, I'm a part of a new Black Youth Liaison committee that the mayor just created a couple weeks ago, I think, so that the city can have a direct voice of the Black youth in Markham. And if the mayor of Markham can do that, if the city of Markham can do that, along with checking their policies, giving equity training and all this stuff, then what are the other cities doing? How come they're not doing anything? How come I hear nothing out of, let's say, Vaughan? How come I hear nothing there? How come I hear nothing out of other cities like that? So I feel like all cities should definitely try to have a Black youth committee that talks to the cities, tells them what we want to see as, you know, their citizens living here, as their youth living here. And there's no reason why they can't do it because it's already been done.
Yeah, the region, or a lot of your parents have been out there doing a lot of this work already. So they already have a plan, right? So how can we actually implement it? And I think it comes when you guys, the youth, can actually start having a voice. And I think that's one thing, because they haven't heard from you. And I think this is a good time, and that we're starting these conversations where they can actually start hearing from the youth, because you're the ones that are being affected the most. Cameron, did you have anything to add to that, or Hannah? No?
I was just gonna say, as far as like positive action goes, I did notice that the mayor of Georgina had openly stated that she stands with Black Lives Matter, which for other municipalities and towns may seem like a very small step, but for Georgina, that's quite a lot. Because there's a very small population of Black people here, and there's a lot of deeply rooted racism. So for her to say that she stands with Black Lives Matter is incredible for our town.
Right.
Just a small point that I have is that there's the good things that the community is doing is that they're listening and they're learning. People are reaching out to us and seeing how they can educate themselves on the topic, and just now it's time to act upon it, and now it's time to make sure that changes happen. Make sure that there's a difference.
Yeah. We have a small amount of time right now, right? We have another probably a month or so before our window closes on talking about anti-Black racism. So we're asking everybody that's on this call to start being allies for us, and making sure that this conversation doesn't stop in the next month or so, right? These kids are going back to school. Mental health, everything is going to be impacted, even for Rachel with her with the anti-Asian racism that she's going to be facing as well, but being a collective voice. And I think that's very important for these youth to have that opportunity to be able to speak, but also be protected by everybody on this call. So that's most of the questions. Do you guys have any other things that you want to add before we go over to questions and answers?
I just want to add on to what Sydney said, and that is, if Markham is doing so, is doing these things, then there's no excuse for other cities like to do this as well. So I think it's great that people are starting to speak out, and not just like the Markham, the people like in power, I guess, also youth and other people that are just creating their own events and stuff like this one, creating their own events, and that's also very impactful and good. And it's just amazing to see that everybody is stepping up and getting really involved. So yeah, everyone can get involved.
Yeah,
Cameron?
and especially with allyship, you guys can get, if you want to get involved and you don't feel comfortable, or you think it's going to be an uncomfortable topic, or you don't know so much, still have the conversation and still educate yourself, and still talk. If you have children, talk to your children. If you have friends, talk with your friends, because if you're learning together, and if you're making an effort to learn, then there's a higher chance of change happening. And if you instead of just saying you're gonna learn and act on it and educate others while doing it, I feel like that's the best way to make it, like I said, make a difference and make positive change.
Okay. And Hannah, do you want to? I think you said what you wanted to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have the questions. The first question I asked already, but I don't know if you want to add more to it. It's about mental health. So what do you think has been some of the mental health impacts from anti-Black racism? Is there anything else that you want to add? And not specifically with the schools. Can you talk about how it's impacted in the community, with the police, what you see on TV, like social media? I think I've seen, every time I go on social media or the news, I'm hearing about a Black person that's been killed or injured, right? Or I see the derogatory stuff that they show about Black people. How is that actually impacting you as youth?
I remember a while back when the George Floyd stuff first started happening over in the States. I remember it was probably, I always get angry when I see things like that happen, but it was the first time that something like this actually affected me in a way other than anger. Like this one, that for some reason, I remember I texted one of my friends who's very supportive of our community, and that I didn't know why, but I just couldn't stop crying for some reason. And I can't put my finger on why it affected me like that, because usually my reaction to headlines like that is to get angry and to want to protest, and I was, but my first instinct was to cry, and it really hurt.
Mm-hmm. Anybody else?
Oh, you can go first.
It's just the mindset that's changed for me. Yeah, I have to be aware of what I put in my bag. I have to be aware of how I dress. I have to make sure my mom and my dad are fearful every time I leave the house, because and are very anal on where I'm going, because if there's a problem, then they'll know exactly how to help me and exactly where I am. And that sorry for stuttering, but that need for safety and that need to have constant reassurance is systemic racism. It's the fact that we don't have the luxury of going anywhere I want without fear of being stopped or being hurt or being killed. I have to have that in the back of my mind at all times. And I don't know if I'm straying away from your question, but it's just small. It's the small things that have a toll over time.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. To add on to So to add on to what both Hannah and Cameron were saying, with regards to the thing that kicked this all off, really was the George Floyd event that happened. And I remember when I first heard about it, I heard about it a day after it happened, because I wasn't on social media, I didn't watch the news, and all of a sudden I went onto Instagram and just constantly I was just bombarded with George Floyd, watch this video, this is what happened to George Floyd, freedom for George Floyd. And it was extremely overwhelming. And I remember just sobbing in my room too, Hannah. And you're not the only one. Don't worry about that. So it really did affect me. And I felt really sad and scared at the same time for the Black men in my life, like my cousins, my friends, my dad, like people like that. Like I felt like genuinely very, very scared, like that something could happen to them. And I'm scared every time I hear, my Black guy friends, when they're like, oh yeah, we're going, like they're going out in like a group, and I'm like, you need to be very careful about what you're doing. Like you can't, like if you're out late at night, you need to be extremely careful. And like that's like, I shouldn't have to be, worrying about that sort of thing. And also, like, on top of that, when I heard about the Elijah McClain case, which was just another thing that was just absolutely terrible, which is, I don't know if everyone knows about who that is, but basically he was another Black man who was killed last year, and he played violin for kittens in a shelter, and he got murdered. How, it's like there's no escaping. It's, you can be a criminal gangster on the street, or you can be a sweetheart who does absolutely nothing wrong, or you can be just a normal person living your life. It doesn't matter what you are, as long as you're Black, you can get killed, basically. And that's, I guess, to address the mental health portion, things that I guess I've heard people say that they were feeling, or things that I felt: sadness, hopelessness, loneliness, and like not having a sense of community, people, feeling like you're scared all the time. So that's, I guess, the feelings that, if someone's looking for with that question in regards to mental health, those are the things that a lot of people have been feeling, including myself.
Still feel it, Sydney. I walk down my street in Markham and I get scared because people actually stop and stare at me while I'm walking in my neighborhood in Markham, and I've lived here my whole life, right? So to be able to walk outside my door and still be scared, right? It's sad. Okay, so I want to go on to the next question. As an elementary school teacher, do you have any suggestions or concerns about what kind of language I could use or prevent? And any suggestions on how I might frame my teaching on Black history in Canada? Anybody can take that one.
I guess I just think that just to be an ally and just know about the stuff that you're going to talk about beforehand, like do your research, know about it. Don't just say what's in the curriculum, I guess. And also just try to prevent from your personal prejudice and bias. Try to prevent that from getting in the way. And yeah. It's
going to be scary, believe me, when you first start. But being able to just actually have that conversation and start, and like she says, just learning, educate yourself, and you're going to make mistakes. It is going to happen. But just keep on going, just keep on learning, and you'll get it eventually on how to actually do it. Sydney or Cameron, did you have anything to add to that, or Hannah?
There's lots of books that are Canadian related. Like I said,
Right.
with Chatham, Buxton, and Dresden, there's lots of areas that highlight Black culture and Black history. And I have a book beside me now. I think you guys saw me getting it. Was I Came as a Stranger, and it highlights Black successes and Black excellence and people who came from America through the Underground Railroad and cultivated this whole city from the ground up. And I think highlighting, one, how just because they escaped America didn't mean they escaped slavery, but also how they were successful and they made this whole community, is important in an education system to show that, again, the representation of how we can be successful and a positive light and optimistic point of view on Black people.
Okay. Sydney or Hannah?
Well, what I could say for elementary is you also don't always have to make it about race. You don't have to be like, okay, kids, we're learning about the Black people today. Like, there's tons of children's books by Black authors that just in the imagery in the book just shows, you know, little black girls with afros, or, you know, just little white boys and little black boys playing together, like it's just, you know, how things should be. And that sort of thing, it just to show the kids like, hey, so this is some representation. Like, you see how, you know, Jimmy and Todd, they're different races, but they're both, you know, still working together, they're still best friends or something. Or, you know, a little girl dealing with her hair, like that's something that you can also like incorporate into your classes. And it's not like, I repeated it, but yeah, you don't always have to make it about race, because if you, you know, what's the word, segregate, if you segregate, you know, the normal books compared to the black books, it's just, it will give the kids, you know, kind of a little bit of a, oh, those are the black books and these are the normal books. So incorporating it as just, you know, this is another book we're learning about, this is another artist, this is another scientist, this is another musician that we're learning about, and they happen to be black, not, you know, we're learning about them, the black person today.
Oh, I know.
So that's
Yes.
important.
That is amazing, Sydney, because that's really important. Just teach it, right? And you don't have to segregate it. I love that. Hannah, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, kind of like what Sydney was saying. I was just remembered I had a music teacher in elementary school who, when she taught us about different genres, it wasn't like she would teach us about everything and exactly where their roots came from, not just during Black History Month. So I think that that's important. And it wasn't about, like Sydney was saying, it wasn't about these people being black. It was about, this is a genre that we're learning about, and this is where it came from, and that's it. And yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so we have one more question, and then I think we're going to be, Vanessa's going to wrap this up. But it was asked when we were talking about Black history, and Amala was asking, then how should it actually be done? How, and I think you kind of answered that, but how should Black history be done in the schools? Like, is there a different way of doing it? And I think you did mention that it should be integrated. I think Sydney just said it should be integrated and put in there just as a normal conversation.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Like, just not have a month based on, spread it out. Especially, it's very important to say it, like, educate students when they're like younger, so that they know about this stuff from an early age, and just give them the ideas, like what Sydney said, just in the picture books, like it's okay to like wear like afros, it's beautiful to have dark skin, like just let them know these like small ideas to kind of make it like this. I guess this is like a great way to first start them, like their idea, the idea of it being okay is just enough to know and stuff like that. And also, like what Sydney said earlier, again, just have it throughout the whole year, not just 1 month, and just talk about their achievements and things like that.
I also think it's important that when we do more focusing on like high school history curriculums, I remember at my high school last November when we did Remembrance Day, one of the teachers who put together the Remembrance Day assembly went out of their way to include Black soldiers who had passed away, and it wasn't about them being Black, it was about them being soldiers. So I think, basically, like Sydney said in the beginning, the bottom line is to integrate it, because we're a part of history, right? So it doesn't have to focus specifically on slavery and the civil rights movement, which we should still talk about, but we don't have to focus specifically on that. We can talk about our contributions in society that were in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s that have nothing to do with segregation, as well as we talk about segregation and civil rights and slavery and things.
Darius had a question, but I did integrate it into one of the that you guys were talking earlier. So I think I'm going to pass over the baton to Vanessa now.
Wow. I'm not gonna lie, I cried a little bit. Yeah. So I just want to say I put up the last poll. If you can just maybe engage in that just for a few more seconds. I'll leave it up, maybe 15 more seconds. We just want to know, because we do want to debrief with these incredible human beings on here. So we want to make them, you know, hear that their voice is being heard. And I see it in the poll. um, great. I'm just going to shut the poll in 2 seconds. So basically, going from here, I mean, we do have a few events we want to move forward with. I don't think I need to say thank you to the people on this panel, and thank you to Josie and for her incredible leadership in today. But I do want to highlight that, and it's been said in the chat, that this is a beginning. Change is here. The youth are telling us what we need to do, and we're following through. So this is another event coming up that two groups in York Region are actually putting to the forefront. So it's the Parents of Black Children and VACA, which is Avon, African Caribbean Association Group. The contacts are here. The reason we're promoting this is because at the bottom it says enough is enough. That came from a youth person that actually put that out, that hashtag. So they're telling us that, and it's time for us to move forward and to actually make effective change. The other event coming up is you see Josie's name at the bottom, because Josie is everywhere. She's just stellar. This is an event that, again, is put on by youth, and is leading us through, again, what are our barriers? How do I relate it to race? How do I relate it to class, discrimination, oppression? So it's mobilized by 360 Kids. And I know Josie's part of this, and I've put her her information at the bottom. So you might want to take a screenshot. I'll leave it up here for a few seconds, or take a picture. Another event in which you can be part of and move forward as we try to disrupt anti-Black racism within our municipalities. This here we decided to put up as a group because we feel that there are leaders within our communities working and have been working for decades. We have some organizations here, and many of the leaders leading this are incredible human beings. And I just wanted to keep this up here. We will post this to our social media because I think it's an important, lots of these slides are important. But especially this one, because the work is being done, but now we want to come together to make sure that, as the youth said, that we usher in change. So take a look at this again. And the last slide that I want to bring up is us. Here we are. So I know that Cameron, Rachel, Hannah, and Sydney wanted me to let you know that this is a group not just for people who identify as Black, but it's for allies, it's for racialized people, Indigenous people. They wanted me to let you know that this is something that is a beginning and not an end. And that as we move forward together. And I know that they come from different regions in York Region. I won't speak for them, but they want York Region to move together, as in one step, one place. And that's something I think I want, Josie wants, Jacqueline and John. Josie, do you have any ending words that you would like to say?
I think everybody's saying it in the chat. So just being an ally, if you're from outside of the Black community, just being there to help support us. Again, we have those 5 organizations that you can call and be a part of. I think I know most of you, and or some of you, Vanessa knows some of you, and always contact us to see what we can do. Again, the youth want to make sure that this is not something that just stops here. This is going to be going on. We're going to want to have panels. We're going to do more panel discussions, more workshops, and those kind of things. So we want to bring every single youth that wants to be involved. I saw somebody say something about Barrie. Like, if there's something that we can help start something in Barrie, then let us know. We're there to do that, right? So we're available. Go on our website, and we're here, right? So thank you.
Yeah, so thank you so much.
Sorry, one more
yeah.
thing. Thank you, the panels. You guys, the panelists were amazing. And again, thank you for sharing your stories. I know, and Rachel's too. I know you're like, oh, would I mess up? I know you were fantastic. And I just want to say thank you for, taking the time to do that.
So I just want to end with thanking you for being here on a Saturday. I know I could end with a quote or something inspirational, but the inspiration was from these 4 youth. And take this with you, move it forward, and hope to see you down there wearing a safe mask on August 3rd at City Hall as we march to Queen's Park. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. Thank you for being here. Hey, youth, do you want to stay on for a second?
All right, I'll end the stream. Thanks everyone for watching.